In this video, we're going to deal a little bit with watercoloring. The other video I made, we used the blender pen. This is the aqua painter. If you take the cap off, it has a brush tip with a water reservoir. And we use it kind of the same way that you do a blender pen, by picking up ink in the lid of the ink pad. But it's a little bit different because it's got the water, it's more wet, it's not a marker. So it's a little bit different looking, different technique. So we're going to do a couple projects today using a couple different stamps, both from the new 2014 Occasions catalog. The first stamp we're going to use is the People Like You stamp. And the second one is the Vivid Vases stamp. Both of these are single stamps and they come in wood mount only. And both of them are excellent for watercolor. I've already got my images stamped onto the paper just to save on time a little bit, make the video a little bit shorter. I've stamped them both onto watercolor paper and used the Jet Black StazOn ink. So let's start with the People Like You stamp. I'm going to do a watercolor wash on this one. And I like the watercolor wash because you don't have to worry about not staying in the lines or being very detailed. It's just kind of messy and creative, and I love it. I absolutely love watercolor. It's my favorite. A little bit more ink on this one. The colors I'm using are Tempting Turquoise, Bermuda Bay, and Old Olive. Alright, so I'm going to start at the top with the Tempting Turquoise. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the ink with my aqua painter. And before I start to paint my image with it, I'm going to give the pen just a tiny little squeeze to make sure that it's nice and wet. You don't want the brush to be too dry. If you find that your brush is a little bit dry once you start painting the image, just give it a tiny little squeeze. Not too much because you don't want to soak the paper. Just enough so that you're not running dry. See, this doesn't really do anything. Just need a little bit more ink and a little bit more water. So this is pretty easy. It goes pretty fast. You just kind of get messy with it and have fun. Darker in some places and lighter in others, kind of asymmetrical, just wherever you feel like. I'm going to bring it about like that. Bring this down a little bit, and then I'm going to switch over to Bermuda Bay. I'm going to start up here a little bit and kind of blend my Bermuda Bay into the Tempting Turquoise. And you'll notice that I'm kind of coloring over the edge here of this little cinnamon. And that's totally fine because when I'm going to use this image for a project, I'm going to stamp a second image and use the coordinating Stampin' Up! Punch to punch this out of the second image and layer it on top. So this portion is going to be covered up anyway. It doesn't matter if you color on top of it. For what I'm using it for anyway. But if that's not how you want to do it, that's perfectly fine too. At the bottom, I'm going to start with my Old Olive. Again, give my aqua painter a little squeeze. Kind of get it dark here at the bottom, and then kind of go up and blend it with the Bermuda Bay. And there we go. just a nice little watercolor wash if I want to go back at the top and add some darker blue to a couple portions of the image, then I can do that. Pretty easy. All right. So there's our first stamped image. I'm going to set that to the side and kind of let that dry. My watercolor paper is a little bit warped right now, you'll notice, but it'll flatten out once it dries. So that's what the watercolor wash looks like on that one. Next, we're going to do our Vivid Vases. I'm going to keep the Old Olive color for this one, but bring in a few other colors. I'm going to do Melon Mambo, Coastal Cabana, Pumpkin Pie, and Daffodil Delight. It's a lot of colors. Alright, you can see my scrap paper here where I've already been scribbling off color as I've been working. Let's make sure we get all that blue off of our aqua painter. I'm going to start with the Daffodil Delight. And I'm going to color my daffodil yellow. I'm going to pick up a little bit more, color the center of this flower, and I think I'm just going to add a tiny bit of yellow here at the top of these tulips. Scribble that off a little bit. Pick up some of this Melon Mambo. I'm going to color petals. Don't forget the little bud here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and color this little flower here. I'll let that dry and I may go back and darken it up a little bit. I'm going to get my pumpkin pie and I'm going to come in here and kind of do the base of these tulips with the orange, kind of bring it up. There we go. And I might add just a tiny, tiny hint of orange to the bell of this daffodil here. Excellent. Let's add a little bit of green for our leaves and our stems. There we go. And finally, I'm going to pick up this Coastal Cabana and I'm going to do the vases. What I'm doing is keeping it kind of dark over to the left side of the vases and kind of keep it light over on the right side as a highlight. You can do it any way you want. This is just how I like it. Get the edges done first, and then I'm going to come back and add a little bit more water and do some shading. But for now, Now, if you're worried about getting it too dark, the great thing about watercolor is that if you mess up a little bit, it's really pretty easy to fix. In fact, I'll make a little mistake right now so you can see what I'm talking about. If I had come over a little bit too far on this vase and it got a little bit too dark where I wanted there to be a highlight, easy fix. Scribble off all of your colors, squeeze your pen a little bit, get some extra water on the edge, on the end of your brush here. Get it extra wet there on the edge where you messed up, and then take a paper towel or a Kleenex or something and blot that. I don't know if you can get a close up here, and you see that that just took a lot of the color off of the edge there. So easily fixable. It's a great thing about watercolor. And then I can just pick up a little bit of color and redo. There we go. And we are done. Very pretty. Now, I did say I would go back and add a little bit more of this Melon Mambo, just in a couple spots. I'm not going to color the whole thing, but because it's I don't know what the word is here, just to give it some depth, I guess. Add a little bit. There we go. So there is our finished watercolor image. And again, the colors are Coastal Cabana, Melon Mambo, Old Olive, Pumpkin Pie, and Daffodil Delight. So this one is a lot more detailed. And this one is watercolor wash. So there's a couple different ways to do your watercoloring.